Welcome to the Robert Joodat Podcast, where intelligence sharpens in the dark. Research-driven, LLM-forged, human-verified. Stay curious.
Here's a number that should stop you cold. Nearly half of all Australian adults, about 8.5 million people, are financially illiterate. And this is a country that ranks in the global top 10 for financial literacy. So what's actually going on? Today, we're getting into the psychology of money, wealth building, and financial freedom. Specifically, what research says actually predicts who builds wealth, why your mindset might be doing more work than your paycheck, and what the FIRE movement gets right that most financial advice misses. By the end of this episode, you'll have a clearer picture of the mental shifts that separate people who build wealth from those who just earn money. And to dig into all of this, I've got someone who's been deep in this research. Let's get into it. So, starting right at the top, when we talk about building wealth, most people immediately think income. Is that actually where the story begins?
It's where most people think the story begins, but the research tells a pretty different story. There's a landmark study published in PLOS One, a peer-reviewed journal, that looked at over 90,000 UK adults, and what they found was striking. Your money attitudes and your financial capability together accounted for 2/3 of the variance in savings and investment wealth. 2/3. Demographics like age, education, gender, income, they mattered, but they only explained about 27% of the variance on their own.
Wait, so your psychology is doing more of the heavy lifting than your actual income?
That's exactly what the data suggests. And it's not just one study. A 2025 paper from the American Psychological Association, one of the largest studies of its kind, with over 143,000 participants across multiple countries, found that dispositional optimism, basically your general tendency to expect positive outcomes, significantly predicts how much you save over time, even after controlling for income, education, and other psychological factors.
So being an optimist literally makes you richer? That feels almost too simple.
It sounds simple, but the mechanism is real. The researchers, Joe Gladstone and Justin Pomerantz from the University of Colorado Boulder and University of New Hampshire, framed it this way. Just like a weather forecast guides whether you carry an umbrella, your expectations about the future shape whether you save or spend. If you believe tomorrow will be better, you're more likely to invest in it. And here's the part that really got me. The effect was strongest for lower-income individuals. Optimism was more strongly associated with saving among people with less money.
That's actually kind of profound. It flips the script on the idea that financial mindset is a luxury only people with money can afford.
Exactly. And it connects to something broader about how we define wealth building in the first place. Because wealth isn't just a number, it's a relationship with money, with time, with risk. And that relationship is deeply psychological.
Let's actually ground this for people who might be hearing wealth building and thinking, okay, but where do I even start? Like, what does financial freedom actually mean in practical terms?
So financial freedom at its core is a state where your financial resources exceed your expenses, where you're not dependent on a paycheck to survive. That's the clean definition. But there's a more nuanced way to think about it that I find really compelling. Eric Kroc, a CFP and president of Kroc Capital, put it this way. Financial freedom shows up in how your time behaves, not how your balance sheet looks.
How your time behaves. I love that framing.
Right? And he made this really interesting point about autonomy versus liquidity. He argued that layering $25,000 into private credit offerings that generate predictable monthly payments can have more impact on your actual independence than a $300,000 retirement account you can't touch for 20 years. It's about cash flow and control over your hours, not just the size of the number.
That's a genuinely different way to think about it. Most people are laser focused on the big retirement number, not on whether the money is actually working for them right now.
And that's where the FIRE movement comes in. Financial independence, retire early. It's built on exactly this idea. The goal isn't necessarily to stop working at 40, though some people do. It's to reach a point where work is a choice, not a necessity. Business Insider describes it as a financial lifestyle aimed at saving enough to become financially independent long before the traditional retirement age of 65.
And FIRE has been around longer than most people realize, right? It's not a TikTok thing.
Much longer. Many people credit a 1992 bestseller called Your Money or Your Life by Joe Dominguez and Vicky Robin as the book that really set the stage for the movement. So this conversation about financial independence has been going on for over 30 years. Social media just gave it a much bigger megaphone.
And the core mechanic of FIRE is pretty straightforward, right? Save and invest aggressively, live on less than you earn.
Exactly. Typically, FIRE participants save and invest more than half of their income and live on a strict budget. Jordan Taylor, an independent financial advisor with Core Planning, described the underlying principle as the time value of money. If you give a dollar time to grow through smart investing, it becomes worth far more than if you just save it. The formula, the SEC's investor.gov, puts it simply: regular investments plus time equals wealth.
Investments plus time equals wealth. That's almost deceptively simple.
It is simple. The hard part isn't the formula, it's the psychology to execute it consistently. And that brings us back to the mindset piece, because this is where most people actually get stuck.
Okay, so let's go deeper on that, because I think a lot of people know they should be saving more, investing earlier, spending less. The information isn't the problem. So what is?
The gap between knowing and doing is almost entirely a psychology problem. And the PLOS One study I mentioned earlier actually gets into this really specifically. They looked at 3 psychological variables: money attitudes, financial capability, and buying impulsiveness. And what they found was that planning ahead was one of the most powerful predictors of wealth, alongside age and income. Not intelligence, not education level, planning ahead.
So it's less about being smart with money and more about having a relationship with your future self.
That's a really good way to put it. And Bankrate actually referenced the Stanford marshmallow test, the famous experiment from the late 1960s where kids who could delay eating a marshmallow tended to have better outcomes later in life, as a direct analogy for personal finance. Small daily decisions around spending, saving, and investing compound into substantial long-term wealth. The discipline muscle is the same one.
I mean, the marshmallow test is such a perfect metaphor. It's not about willpower in the moment. It's about whether you can hold a vision of the future clearly enough to make the present-day sacrifice feel worth it.
Exactly. And that connects directly to what the mindset research says about scarcity versus abundance thinking. If your internal narrative is that wealth is for other people or that you'll never get ahead, those beliefs color every financial decision you make. The research is pretty clear that shifting from a scarcity mindset to one of abundance and continuous learning changes how you see opportunities.
Okay, but I want to push back a little here because I think there's a risk of this becoming too individualistic. Like, just think positive and you'll be rich is not great advice for someone dealing with structural barriers.
That's a really fair challenge, and the research actually addresses it. The APA Optimism study was careful to note that optimism predicts savings even when controlling for income and demographics, but it doesn't erase structural inequality. The Annual Review of Sociology published a major piece on wealth inequality and accumulation that makes clear wealth is cumulative and highly skewed. The psychological factors matter, but they operate within a system that isn't level.
So the mindset work is real and meaningful, but it's not a substitute for systemic change.
Right. And I think the most honest framing is, within whatever circumstances you're in, your psychology is one of the most powerful levers you actually control. That's not dismissing the structural stuff. It's saying, here's what you can work with.
That feels like an important distinction. Now, you mentioned financial capability as a key variable in that PLOS One study. What does that actually mean in practice? Because capability sounds vague.
Financial capability is essentially your ability to manage money effectively, understanding how to budget, how debt works, how investments grow, how to plan for the future. And this is where Australia's situation is genuinely alarming. UNSW Business School published research showing that around 8.5 million Australian adults, about 45%, are financially illiterate. And this is a country that ranks in the global top 10 for financial literacy globally.
Top 10 globally, but nearly half the adult population can't demonstrate basic financial literacy. That's a wild contradiction.
And it gets more specific. The UNSW research found a significant gender gap. 63% of Australian men demonstrate basic financial literacy, compared to just 48% of women. And among teenagers, it's even more stark. 28% of teenage boys show financial literacy versus just 15% of teenage girls. Professor Isabella Dobrescu from UNSW pointed out that students are perceiving economics as abstract and disconnected from their everyday lives, when it's actually the opposite.
And the pipeline is shrinking too, right? Fewer young people are even studying economics.
Dramatically. The Reserve Bank of Australia commissioned research showing that since the early 1990s, Year 12 economics enrolments in Australia have fallen by about 70%. 70%. And the decline is most pronounced among girls, regional students, and other underrepresented groups. So the people who arguably need financial education the most are the ones least likely to be getting it.
That's a really uncomfortable loop. Less financial education leads to worse financial outcomes, which reinforces the idea that wealth isn't for you, which makes you less likely to engage with financial education.
That's exactly the loop. And Professor Dobrescu's point was that without the skills to manage savings, investments, or debt, people are more likely to make decisions that lead to poorer economic outcomes and long-term financial instability. It's not a character flaw, it's a knowledge gap that compounds over time.
So what does breaking that loop actually look like? Like, if someone is listening to this and thinking, okay, I want to start building wealth, where does the research say to begin?
The SEC's investor.gov lays out a really clean framework. First, get smart about credit card debt. High-interest debt is a wealth killer because it compounds against you. Second, build an emergency fund covering 3 to 6 months of living expenses. That's your buffer so you don't have to go into debt every time something unexpected happens. Third, start investing regularly, even 5% to 10% of your income, and automate it so it happens without you having to make a decision every month.
The automation piece is underrated. It removes the willpower equation entirely.
Completely. Investor.gov actually calls it set it and forget it. Automate your contributions so you're building wealth every time you get paid instead of having to make multiple separate decisions each year. And Bankrate calls the broader principle pay yourself first. Treat your savings like a non-negotiable bill that gets paid before anything else.
And the Barnum Financial Group research on high net worth individuals backs this up, right? It's not about big dramatic moves. It's about consistent behaviors.
Exactly. Their analysis of Federal Reserve's survey of consumer finances data found that high net worth individuals tend to share similar habits, and it's less about income level and more about consistency, strategy, and financial awareness. They think long-term, they manage debt strategically, they live below their means, and they use employer benefits fully. None of that is glamorous, it's just disciplined.
Living below your means is one of those things that sounds obvious, but is genuinely hard in a world that's constantly marketing lifestyle upgrades at you.
And the Barnum research makes a really specific point about this. They call it spending intentionally. It's not about deprivation, it's about not automatically inflating your lifestyle every time your income goes up. That gap between what you earn and what you spend is the engine of wealth accumulation. The wider that gap, the faster you build.
There's also a mindset shift in there that I think is worth naming, moving from thinking about money as something you trade your time for to thinking about it as something that can work for you.
That's one of the most fundamental shifts. The idea that your income is capped by the hours in your day is a limiting belief that keeps a lot of people stuck. The alternative is building systems, rental income, dividend stocks, a side business, a portfolio generating interest, things that produce value even when you're not actively working. The goal is to decouple your earnings from your daily clock.
And that's not just motivational poster stuff. That's actually what the FIRE movement is built on structurally.
Completely. FIRE participants are essentially building income systems aggressively enough that those systems can replace their salary. And the time value of money is the engine. The earlier you start, the more time your investments have to compound. Jordan Taylor's framing was, if I give you $1 today, what will it be worth in 20 years? That depends entirely on what you do with it.
I want to come back to something you said earlier about the psychology of money being shaped by family beliefs and early experiences, because I think that's where a lot of people's money stories actually start, not in a spreadsheet.
That's a really important thread. The behavioral finance research, and there's a whole field dedicated to this now, looks at how emotions like fear and greed, and even inherited family beliefs about money, drive financial decisions. Brian Portnoy, a CFA and founder of Shaping Wealth, has written about this extensively. His book, The Geometry of Wealth, explores how to build a life of meaning, not just wealth, which is a really different framing than just maximizing net worth.
A life of meaning, not just wealth. That's a pretty significant reframe of what financial success even means.
And it connects to the financial therapy angle, which is a growing field. Christy Archuleta, a professor at the University of Georgia and a certified financial therapist, specializes in the intersection of money, relationships, and well-being. The idea is that your financial behaviors are often symptoms of deeper psychological patterns, and you can't fully address the behaviors without understanding the patterns.
So it's not just about knowing the right strategies, it's about understanding why you're not using them.
Exactly. And Henrik Kronqvist, a behavioral finance scholar at Chapman University who trained under Nobel laureate Richard Thaler, has published research in top journals showing how psychology shapes financial decision-making in ways that are often invisible to the person making the decisions. We think we're being rational, but we're often running on emotional autopilot.
Emotional autopilot. That's a really vivid way to put it. And I think that's where the scarcity mindset thing becomes really concrete. If your default emotional setting around money is fear or scarcity, that autopilot is going to make decisions that reinforce that fear.
Right. And the PLOS One study found that associating money with security, as opposed to status or power, was an important predictor of savings and investment behavior. People who see money as a source of security are more likely to save it. People who see it as a status signal are more likely to spend it visibly.
That's such a clean insight. Your relationship with what money means to you determines what you do with it.
And that's why the mindset work isn't soft or secondary, it's foundational. You can know every investment strategy in the world, but if your emotional relationship with money is driving you toward impulsive spending or avoidance, the strategies won't stick.
Let's talk about debt for a second, because I think it's one of those topics where the psychology gets really complicated. Not all debt is the same, right? Not at all. The Barnum Financial Group research makes a really important distinction. Not all debt is inherently harmful. Wealth builders approach borrowing carefully, distinguishing between debt that supports long-term goals, like a mortgage or education, and debt that primarily funds consumption. The focus is on paying down high-interest debt first, avoiding unnecessary borrowing, and keeping payment levels manageable relative to income.
And there are specific strategies for tackling debt, the snowball and avalanche methods. Right. The debt snowball method prioritizes paying off smaller debts first. You get quick wins that build momentum and motivation. The avalanche method targets the highest interest debts first, which minimizes total interest paid over time. Both require making minimum payments on everything while throwing extra money at the target debt. Which one works better depends on the person. The snowball is more psychologically motivating. The avalanche is more mathematically efficient.
And the SEC's guidance on this is pretty direct. Credit card debt specifically is a wealth killer because of the compounding interest.
Investor.gov is very clear on this. Credit cards charge high interest rates if you can't pay off the balance monthly, and that interest increases the price of everything you buy while stretching your debt over years. They even give a specific example. A $40,000 car can come with a payment over $800 a month, which limits your ability to save, invest, or pay off other debt. The point is that every dollar going to high-interest debt is a dollar not compounding for you.
Every dollar going to high-interest debt is a dollar not compounding for you. That's a really useful way to frame it.
And it connects back to the time value of money. Time is the ingredient that makes investing powerful, and debt is the thing that steals your time by forcing you to work just to service the interest.
So when you step back from everything we've covered today, the psychology research, the FIRE movement, the financial literacy crisis, the habits of wealth builders, what's the through line? What's the thing that ties it all together?
The through line is that wealth building is fundamentally a behavioral and psychological challenge, not just a mathematical one. The formula, investments plus time equals wealth, is simple. The hard part is the consistent execution over years and decades, and that execution is driven by your mindset, your relationship with money, your ability to delay gratification, and your belief that the future is worth investing in.
And the optimism research really underscores that last point. If you don't believe the future will be better, why would you sacrifice for it?
Exactly. The APA study found that optimism predicts savings even after controlling for income, and the effect is strongest for people with less money. That's not a small finding. It suggests that cultivating a genuine, evidence-based optimism about your financial future might be one of the most practical things you can do. Not toxic positivity, but a real belief that your actions today will matter tomorrow.
And the financial literacy piece is critical here too, because you can't be optimistic about a future you don't understand how to build. The UNSW research showing that 45% of Australian adults are financially illiterate isn't just a statistic, it's a description of people who are navigating a complex financial system without a map.
And the gender gap makes it even more urgent. When only 15% of teenage girls in Australia demonstrate basic financial literacy, that's a generation of young women entering adulthood without the tools to build wealth. And that gap compounds over a lifetime. Professor Dobrescu's point was that this isn't just a personal problem, it's a societal one that the Reserve Bank of Australia has acknowledged.
So the actionable takeaway isn't just invest early and automate your savings. It's also actively build your financial knowledge, because the knowledge gap is real and it has consequences.
Both things are true and they reinforce each other. The knowledge gives you the tools, the mindset gives you the will to use them. And the habits, paying yourself first, living below your means, managing debt strategically, thinking long term, those are the daily expressions of both. None of it is complicated. All of it requires consistency.
Here's what this really comes down to, and I think it's worth saying clearly. The gap between people who build wealth and people who don't is less about income than most of us assume. The PLOS One study showed that psychological variables account for 2/3 of the variance in savings and investment wealth. 2/3. That means the conversation about money is really a conversation about how you think, what you believe, and what you're willing to do consistently over time.
And the FIRE movement, for all its intensity, is really just a concentrated version of that principle. Save aggressively, invest early, build systems that generate income without requiring your constant presence, and protect your time. Financial freedom isn't a finish line, it's a structural shift in how your money and your hours relate to each other.
Financial freedom shows up in how your time behaves. I keep coming back to that line from Eric Kroc. It reframes the whole thing. It's not about the number in your account, it's about whether you own your hours.
And that's achievable at different scales. It doesn't require a $300,000 retirement account you can't touch. It can start with automating $50 a month, paying down one credit card, building a 3-month emergency fund. The direction matters more than the size of the first step.
All right, here's where I want to leave people. We started this episode with a number: 8.5 million Australians who are financially illiterate. That's not a judgment, it's a description of a system that hasn't equipped people with the tools they need. But here's the thing. The research is clear that the most powerful variable in your financial future isn't your income or your education level. It's your mindset, your habits, and your belief that the future is worth building toward. The marshmallow test was never really about marshmallows. It was about whether you could hold a vision of something better clearly enough to act on it today. So the question isn't whether you can afford to start building wealth. The question is whether you believe you can. And if you're not sure yet, that's exactly where the work begins. Thanks for joining us on Copilot Podcasts.